Saludos a toda la afición de Lucha Libre Online. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online, acompañado por Fabricio Solano de Costa Rica para el mundo también de Lucha Libre Online. Y tenemos el enorme privilegio de presentarles a nuestro invitado especial, gente, en la noche de hoy, directamente desde Sudáfrica para el mundo, pero en directo desde Los Ángeles, ex campeón mundial en parejas de WWE, superestrella de Ring of Honor, anteriormente conocido como Justin Gabriel, actualmente PJ Black is in the house. The Darewolf is here in Lucha Libre Online. PJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, guys. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. And Fabricio will be shooting the first question. Fabri, métele mano.
Thank you, Michael. So one more time, PJ Black, thank you very much for this opportunity. I have the first question, and it is about how did your passion for pro wrestling started?
Well, I grew up in the business, right? My father was a wrestler and a promoter. So, I grew up in the business. I loved it ever since the first time I can remember seeing it. I don't even know how old I was. I know when I was 8 years old, I told my family and friends, I went, I'm going to be a pro wrestler one day. And everyone said, no, might not be possible because nobody from South Africa has made it big yet. And I was like, perfect. Well, I'll be the first then. And, I started refereeing matches when I was like 11 years old. So being in the ring and understanding and realizing how the whole show worked, I was like even more adamant about making this my career.
I'll do a brief translation to that in Spanish. PJ inicia en la industria de la lucha libre porque ya su papá era luchador, ya le estaba como parte del negocio. Y entonces cuando tenía 8 años, él dice, yo quiero ser luchador. Le dice, nadie de Sudáfrica ha logrado tener éxito en esto. Y PJ le dice, perfecto, voy a ser el primer luchador sudafricano en poner el nombre en alto. Y ya desde los 11 años estaba siendo árbitro en la industria de la lucha libre. What do you recall of your early days training in South Africa? But specifically, what do you remember about your first bump? Because usually it sucks.
No, it did. And, I started training when I was like 14 years old. So the smaller you are, the more stuff hurts because, there's less give and, like the ropes hurt, like for the first year, you have like these rope burns on your, on your back and the bumps hurt. And, my dad was pretty tough. He had national colors in multi different sports. He was a shoot wrestler. He was a judo coach, world champion, so he kind of roughed me up. He beat me up a lot. You hear of Stu Hart in the dungeon, like roughing up the kids. Like that was my dad. My dad, he didn't take it easy on me. My dad, everybody in South Africa who broke into the business, their first match was against my dad. And so was mine when I was 16 years old. And I will never, ever forget that.
Fabrizio will actually, that's his next topic. But before we go to that, I'll translate to Spanish. PJ, sus primeras prácticas, obviamente, él inició a los 14 años a entrenar. Mientras más pequeño y más flaco eres, más duele el golpe. Y entonces él cuenta como tenía toda la espalda, todo el brazo quemado con los ropes, con las sogas, el burn. Y obviamente fue difícil. Y menciona que en Sudáfrica toda persona entrenaba con su papá y él era como Stu Hart, tenía cero misericordia, les daba más duro por ser su familia. Y entonces casi todo el mundo de la industria en Sudáfrica inició luchando con su papá, y de hecho su primera lucha fue con su papá a los 16 años, y Fabricio tiene la próxima pregunta sobre eso.
Michael. So, who was the person responsible to contact you and open the door and allow you entrance inside the WWE?
Let me see. It was quite a few people actually. I dealt with quite a few people online. The person I dealt with, he got fired at that time. So I think it was Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis at the time, who invited me to for the tryout, and I came to the US, and it was Steve Kern, Dusty Rhodes, Dr. Tom Pritchard, and Norman Smiley. And those 4 guys helped me out with the tryout, told me what to do, what to say, and stuff like that. And then, after that, they put a word in for me at WWE and at the head office. And yeah, that's the rest is history.
I'll translate that. ¿Quién es la primera persona que lo contacta y cómo él llega a WWE? Si era un muchacho de Sudáfrica en aquel momento, sin mucho contacto. Johnny Ace o John Laurinaitis es quien lo contacta. Ahí llega directamente allá. Hay personas como Norman Smiley, como Dr. Tom Pritchard, como Steve Kern, y el resto de las personas trabajan con él y lo ponen en una buena lista para que la empresa se interese en él. Before we go to the WWE, since you mentioned your father, you debuted with him against when you were like 16 years old. What do you recall of that first match wrestling your own father? How was that experience for you? And what do you recall, of the audience those days?
Oh man. Okay, so the match happened in the tennis stadium in Durban, where a lot of famous people actually got their first matches from. I think WWE, when they toured to South Africa, they still work that same building. It's got a lot of history, you know. It's a shithole, but it's got a lot of history. So my first match, it's like it's a tennis stadium, right? So there's a tennis court and there's seats around, and then there's one stadium on this side. But that day it was raining, so nobody was around the ring. Everybody was up here, and there was probably like 6,000 people. So the entranceway was like here, and I walked out, and I didn't see anybody. But when I looked around, I see 8,000 people. This is my first match, so I get stage fright. I freeze. I'm like, uh-oh. And then my dad just runs out, and he just chops me. And he just throws me in the ring. And he goes, "Here we go, kid." And like he told me I could go over, which he just shoot pinned me. It was a really fun experience. I remember it was a boxing ring too, so it was really, really hard. I remember the springboard moonsault I do off the top rope. I've been doing that since I was like 13 years old. So my dad was like, yeah, do that for the finish. And I jumped up, and as I jumped, he got up and he caught me on his shoulder and he just power slammed me. And I was so winded that I couldn't even kick out, and that was the finish.
Oh, wow. I'll do a brief translation to that, to Spanish, if you allow me. PJ inicia en la industria de la lucha libre cuando tenía 16 años ante su padre. Fue en Sudáfrica y fue en un estadio de tenis. O sea, PJ dice que WWE todavía llega a estos estadios de tenis en donde tenían el espacio de la cancha de tenis y encima de esto tenían las personas alrededor del estadio. Pero ese día estaba lloviendo, habían 6,000 personas aproximadamente y la situación como que no era muy buena, pero estaba lloviendo, estaba nervioso, le dio stage fright y él llega, entra por la rampa y de momento llega su papá, palmetazo al pecho, un shot y otra vez otro palmetazo y ahí comienza a estallar la lucha. PJ se envuelve, se mete en la lucha y él dice que el moonsault con springboard que él hizo en la lucha, que es el que siempre ha hecho, lo lleva haciendo como desde los 13 años. Y entonces después de eso hace esa movida que se supone que su papá le dijo, mira, para que vayas por encima de mí sin ningún problema. Y mano, el resto es historia. Sabemos que debutó y sabemos que todo lo hizo con mucho éxito. Fabricio will have the next question. Fabri, mete mano.
So thank you, Michael. So, Mr. Pretty Black, what do you recall of your first weeks in WWE? How was the locker room? How easy or difficult way to adjust into completed different roster?
Yeah, it was a big change for me, you know, because I moved from South Africa to the US, so that was a big move for me. First couple of weeks, you know, people didn't really know who I was or what I'm capable of, so you know, people were kind of like rude or mean, for lack of a better term, you know, because they were just like, who's this kid? Because at that time at FCW, they were signing a lot of like models and football players and non-wrestlers, so people didn't think that I was a wrestler. But then, you know, after the first few matches or people saw what I could do, everyone was like, oh wow, can you teach me some of that? And you know, people were really pleased to work with me, if you will. It was a fun time, definitely a fun experience. I met so many cool people in developmental, and you know, still to this day, I came over to the US just by myself with my wrestling gear, and all the friends I made, all the guys from Nexus, they're still my friends and they're like my family till today.
I'll translate that to Spanish. ¿Qué recuerda PJ de sus días iniciales en WWE? Esa transición de mudarse de Sudáfrica a Estados Unidos siempre fuerte, pero hizo amigos, conoció personas para el resto de su vida y fue una bonita experiencia trabajar en el territorio de desarrollo y todavía es amigo, de hecho, de esos muchachos de Nexus. Lo que me lleva a mi próxima pregunta. So let's talk about when you got called up into the main roster and in what a way you do it. You were part of the first season of NXT. Who gave you the call up to the main roster? Like, who notified you? PJ, or at that point, Justin Gabriel, you're going to be a part of history?
So they were trying to create, I don't know if you can remember NXT season 1, right?
Yeah.
They were trying to create that reality show, but they were trying to do something like the UFC one, the Ultimate Fighter. where all the guys stay in the house and compete, and they were trying to make it like that. But in real wrestling fashion, they ran out of time, and the day that we were supposed to go live, we're like, oh wow, we don't have anything yet, so I guess we'll just do some kind of wrestling show with some competitions. And it was very random, not scripted, you know. I mean, it was all over the place. And I forget, you know, it was a whole group of us, so not one person gave me a phone call, so it was the whole NXT group got pulled into the office. And I think Dr. Tom and Dusty Rhodes told us about the whole plan.
I'll translate that. ¿Quién fue la persona o las personas en notificarle? Dr. Tom Pritchard y Dusty Rhodes son quienes lo reúnen. No a él solo. You're still in an amazing shape, man. Dr. Tom Pritchard y Dusty Rhodes los contactan, los reúnen a todo el grupo de NXT. Ellos estaban tratando de crear algo similar a lo que hacía UFC con Ultimate Fighter, en donde tienen estas pistas de obstáculos y todo, y eventualmente no funcionó lo que ellos querían hacer, pero sacaron algo mejor, que estamos hablando de lo que es Nexus. Fabricio, puedes ir directamente entonces a la próxima pregunta, que es la octava.
So, what can you reveal of Bane's conversation with Nexus the night of the debut? That was crazy, man. That night is so crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't know really what to expect, you know, because usually in wrestling, storylines and stuff are just recycled from other times, but this was something completely unique. So we didn't have anywhere to draw inspiration from or know what to expect. We were in this little office, and Vince basically told us, this is what you will do, and all of us were like, oh, okay. And we did it, and yeah, it came out good. I mean, Vince is a genius. It was all his idea.
Perfect. I'll translate that. Fue idea completamente de Vince, porque como él dice, es un genio, y les dice, esto es lo que vamos a hacer, y ellos simplemente se encargaron de ejecutar. What went through your mind specifically? You know, you worked with Heath Slater for a while. Like, yes, there was the Nexus. You guys did have an incredible impact, but you worked with Heath as a tag team, basically in the core, in the Nexus, and everywhere you went. So, first of all, how was working with Heath Slater? And secondly, what went through your mind when the referee mentioned to ring the bell after he counted 3 and you won the tag team titles for the first time in your career?
I mean, that was pretty surreal because, yeah, me and Heath, for the first 3 or 4 years on the road, you know, we traveled together on the plane, in the car, we shared hotel rooms together. So he was like my brother, you know, we did everything together. So winning the tag title with him was like, it was pretty awesome. It was, I don't even know what word to use there, but he's like my brother, man. He's one of the most talented guys out there. People don't realize, you know, a lot of the companies don't use him to his full potential, but he's extremely talented. So for me, it was super fun. It was super easy. And I just remember when the ref counted 3, I just looked at Heath, and he was just like, I was happy, but he was ecstatic. Like, he was, I've never seen anybody that happy ever, man. Like, we were driving that night. I think we had a 3-hour drive, and he would just go like this, whoo, 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 like the whole time. You know, he's just a very happy guy, good human, good soul, great wrestler.
I know Heath, and I've heard that before, so I'll translate that to Spanish. Le pregunto sobre trabajar con Heath Slater. Si él trabajó con The Nexus, si él trabajó con The Core, pero trabajaron, Heath y él eran uña y mugre, estaban todo el tiempo juntos. Como él dice, Heath es mi hermano, un excelente ser humano, un alma hermosa, una persona dispuesta a trabajar. Y él recuerda de la primera noche que ganó los títulos en pareja, cuando el árbitro cuenta 3, como que Justin estaba, o PJ estaba bien contento, pero Heath estaba estático, estaba como que nunca había visto a alguien tan feliz en su vida. Y cuando viajaron esa noche, Heath estaba, como él dice, como que como que emocionado, estaba con esa adrenalina en 100 todavía en el vehículo. Fabri, la próxima.
That was amazing, bro. How was your experience working with John Cena and many veterans in the roster? What did you learn it with them?
Yeah, I mean, you learn something from everybody you work, whether they're a veteran or, you know, a newcomer, you or a rookie, you always learn something, man. Before Eddie Guerrero died in the UK, I spoke to him, and he's like, man, every day I learn something. And to me, Eddie was one of the best, all-time best, you know. So, and I realized that at that time. I was like, wow, yeah, I do learn something. Even if it's something negative or something small, you always learn something. working with John Cena, I have learned so much. That guy is on another level. You know, people give him shit for being who he is. I mean, you know, he's the wrestling Superman, but you know, he deserves all the fame and everything he's had. I mean, people might disagree, but he works really, really hard. You know, he's very talented. He understands wrestling. He understands entertainment. He understands how to entertain a crowd, but more importantly, he understands how to take people on an emotional roller coaster, because that's what wrestling is, right? It's like live theater. If you whether they and he always, that's one thing I learned from him. He says, whether they cheer you or boo you, that's great. You know, it's when they do nothing, that's when it's a problem.
I'll translate that to Spanish. PJ trabajó con muchas superestrellas como John Cena, entre muchísimas otras superestrellas, y menciona que la gente podrá hablar lo que sea de John Cena, pero John Cena es como un Superman de la lucha libre. Es una persona que se merece todo el éxito y la fama que tiene. Y Cena le enseñó a trabajar con un público, vamos a decirlo de esa manera, porque él dice, la lucha libre es como teatro, como hacer teatro, pero en vivo, hacerlo live. Y entonces nace esa oportunidad de trabajar con Cena, y él dice que Cena es como una montaña rusa de emociones, al igual que la industria de la lucha libre, y le enseñó que, ok, si te abuchean, estás haciendo algo bien, si te aplauden, estás haciendo bien, si no reaccionan, ahí es donde puede haber el problema. Fabricio, vámonos para la 13.
Okay, Michael. So, what did you and the WWE parted separate ways? Why?
There was just a bunch of conflict of interests, if you will. You know, I didn't feel like I was being used to my full potential, and I kept pitching ideas, and you know, maybe I should have stuck out a little bit longer. But at that time, you know, I think I was 35, 36. I was kind of, you know, getting up there, so I wanted to do more stuff, and I wanted to see what else is out there. You know, my plan was always to wrestle all over the world, and I have now. I've wrestled in 65 countries. But yeah, most of that thanks to WWE and growing up in Africa. But you know, it was, I'm very blessed. It was very, very fun experience. You know, and I mean, I think I'm not even in my prime yet. So, you know, I still have a lot of things that I want to do and achieve. So at that time, I felt like I had to leave. That was the right choice. I mean, it was very hard for me. It was extremely hard because it was my dream to be there.
I'll translate that. PJ menciona que pues obviamente fue algo bien difícil tomar caminos separados con la WWE, pero él sentía que ya no lo estaban utilizando como debían, que su potencial era demasiado grande, que él quería hacer otras cosas con su vida también, y sentía que WWE ya no era el lugar para estar y lograrlas. Entonces él menciona que su meta era viajar todo el mundo. Ha viajado 65 países, 65 different countries, algunos con WWE, algunos en el circuito independiente, y poco a poco va concretando sus metas. After you left WWE, you basically were a citizen of the world. Like, for example, suddenly you were in Panama, or you were in any country you wanted to be. But at a certain point, you took a decision and decided to sign with Ring of Honor. Why did Ring of Honor at that point was the correct decision for you as a performer, but also as a human?
Well, before that, I signed with Lucha Underground, actually, and that kind of like changed my perspective, you know, because I didn't want to sign with anyone. I just wanted to be a free agent and wrestle wherever. But when I signed with Lucha, things changed a little bit. A lot of things changed. And then when I was a free agent again, I was kind of looking to do the same thing, but I've always been a fan of Ring of Honor. I looked at their roster and I was like, wow, that's a phenomenal roster. I think maybe I'm biased, but it's one of the best rosters out there. And I looked at the list and I was like, wow, I can have good matches with all of these guys. So I like, you know, to them, and it was really hard to get into contact, but eventually we made it happen, and they offered me something that I couldn't refuse. You know, it was, I cannot give you too many details, but it was like everything that I wanted out of a wrestling company.
I'll translate that. Antes de firmar con Ring of Honor, estuvo con Lucha Underground porque no quería firmar con ninguna empresa. Y ahí entonces es que se le abre su mente y él dice, ok, no es tan malo entonces. Tiene una buena experiencia con Lucha Underground y entonces decide firmar con Ring of Honor, quien él entiende que tiene el mejor roster y tiene uno de los mejores talentos en toda la industria. Siempre le encantó el concepto de Ring of Honor, así que él entendía que era la decisión correcta para su carrera. Fabricio.
So, PJ, how's been your experience with Ring of Honor?
It's been amazing. You know, the talent at Ring of Honor is amazing. Like these young up and coming kids, Dragon Lee, Flip Gordon, Bandito. These guys are amazing. They're the future, you know. And then you guys have guys like Rush, who I respect very much. I think he's fantastic. You know, we have PCO, the Briscoes, some of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Jay Lethal, one of my favorite. I got to wrestle him twice now. I'm very stoked. And there's quite a few guys I haven't wrestled yet on the roster, and I'm looking forward to this year. You know, it's a shame this pandemic has us kind of like shut down and empty arena shows, but we're still filming shows. Um, yeah, I'm really looking forward to the future with Ring of Honor, man.
I'll translate that to Spanish. PJ menciona que su experiencia en el roster de Ring of Honor ha sido excelente. Menciona talentos como Dragon Lee, como Bandido, como Rush, como los Briscoes, como Jay Lethal, que ha tenido la oportunidad de echar 2 veces con él. Y ha sido una experiencia increíble. La pandemia ha retrasado todo un poco y entonces ha causado que haya eventos en donde no hay público asistiendo, pero poco a poco entonces van a ir cayendo las cosas, vamos a decirlo así, en su lugar. As part of, you know, you were out of action and you are partially still out of action for a while. I mean, you've been dealing for a pretty nasty injury. We saw the pictures and I still got goosebumps remembering it. How's been your recovery process, and, you know, what's been the most complicated part, both mentally and physically?
Yeah, great question. It's been very tough, but luckily the pandemic happened, right? So a lot of people were locked down. So I had to stay at home either way. So, you know, usually for an athlete, if you get injured, it's very frustrating because you just want to get out there and do your job, do your thing, do what you're passionate about. But, you know, like sitting at home, nobody was doing that. So it was kind of a little bit easier for me, but it was still very hard because, you know, going to a hospital, going to a doctor, getting around was really hard, wearing a mask, and like everyone's scared. And it was a really tough time. I'm actually way ahead of schedule. I actually wrestled last weekend. I've been cleared for like a month. I wrestled the New Japan Strong tapings last week, so watch out for those. They should be really fun. But it feels good. The first couple of weeks when I got back into the ring, it really hurt. My body really hurt. It felt like the first time when I started training, but it feels good now. After like a couple of weeks, you know, I gotta get my wind back. I'm in good shape. I just need to work on my lungs a little bit, but I'll get there.
I'll translate to Spanish. Le pregunto sobre, pues, el PJ sufrió una lesión bastante aparatosa. Pueden ir a verla a su Facebook, en donde el hueso salió de su piel. Algo muy difícil. El proceso ha sido difícil adaptarse. Es fuerte, pero una vez ya los fanáticos, está todo el mundo sentado en su casa y las arenas están vacías, se le hace un poco más sencillo. Nos da la exclusiva de que ya luchó el fin de semana pasado específicamente con New Japan Pro Wrestling. Sorpresa, PJ ahora está en New Japan Pro Wrestling con New Japan Strong. En los tapings, así que échenle un ojo. Son los viernes a las 10 de la noche, hora del este, por Fight TV, New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong. Los lunes a las 7 de la noche, hora del este, por ROHWrestling.com o por Fight TV tienen el programa de Ring of Honor. Lunes a 7 de la noche, hora del este. Y los miércoles tienen el Women's Wednesday de Ring of Honor a las 7 de la noche también por el canal de YouTube. Before Fabricio goes to the next question, I actually wanted to talk about what you just mentioned. I mean, you are officially now with New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong in this new concept. I mean, I've seen guys like Fred Roser. I mean, Fred is amazing. He's always been amazing, but, you know, he took some time to think things, and now his wrestling style changed. Like, yes, he still does what he did in WWE, but he's more vicious, more physical, more aggressive. How does PJ Black's wrestling style changes in order to adjust to the New Japan Pro Wrestling program and format?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I constantly adapt. You know, like every year, like I look different, I wrestle different. I feel like there's a few guys in wrestling who can get away with just being the same their whole lives, you know, but some of us, we have to adapt and evolve with the business. Yeah, Fred is amazing. I like what he's doing too, you know, because currently on the indies, the way that Fred is built, he's a big guy compared to, like, you know, because the modern day wrestler is a lot smaller, you know, so that style works and he looks good, he looks the part, so it's fantastic. And I've adopted some of that, but I also went back to some of my old stuff, and, you know, I constantly mix it. Back in South Africa, we didn't really have a style, you know, because in Britain you have the You have in Germany is the catch as can style. In lucha libre style. In Japan, it's like the strong style, right? So growing up in South Africa, we didn't really have a style, so I took pieces of all that and combined them. So I know all the styles. I can do any style. So for me, it's pretty easy. I can be in there with anybody, even if they don't even speak English. I can put up a good match.
I'll translate that. Le pregunto, ya que ya es oficialmente parte del roster de New Japan Pro Wrestling, sorpresa y exclusiva para Lucha Libre Online, PJ nos comenta que él ha adaptado su formato porque él se ve diferente, se toca la barba, se lo diferente, está en buena forma física, cambió el concepto y ya no es tal vez el mismo high flyer que veíamos. Está haciendo cosas que hacía en Sudáfrica, está haciendo cosas que hacía en WWE y está haciendo cosas que hacía en Lucha Underground. Adapta un poco del formato de lucha libre mexicana, un poco del strong style japonés, un poco del estilo de lucha de Alemania, lo mezcla con el wrestling estadounidense y boom, tenemos un nuevo PJ Black en el sistema. Fabricio, you can go to the next question.
So, have you been contacted about a possible Nexus return or got offered a separate deal?
Everybody asked this, and that's a good question. Personally, I have not, but I heard from the other guys that people have been in contact, and I don't know, maybe it's because I'm under contract, but personally, I have not heard anything.
Translate that. Fabricio con las preguntas difíciles en la noche de hoy. Le pregunta si ha sido contactado por WWE para un regreso de Nexus o un regreso independiente. Él dice, a él personalmente no lo han contactado porque está bajo contrato con Ring of Honor, pero sí ha escuchado que al resto de los muchachos que están como agentes libres sí los han contactado. Así que está bastante interesante. PJ, as part of that Trotamundos lifestyle, do you have traveling the whole world? You will be making your return to Mexico after a long time for a new company, Federación Wrestling, with people like Rush, Dragon Lee. You know, there's part of the Ring of Honor roster there, but there's also Ty Conti, Rey Fénix, Penta from AEW, and you also have talent from AAA, from CMLO. Like, there's like this, okay, it's like this zero zone where every people from different companies just can come, meet, and work together. First of all, how does it feel for you to be back in Mexico wrestling? And what can we expect from PJ Black in Federación Wrestling in Mexico?
Oh, wow. I am so excited. I mean, I've been trying to go back to Mexico for a while. You know, I love Mexico. I've surfed in Oaxaca down south. I've base jumped there. I love wrestling all over Mexico. I'm really excited, man. I didn't realize this was a new promotion because, you know, I've never heard of them. So while I was negotiating with them, I was like, yeah, okay, mate, I'll go back. And then when they sent me the card, the poster, I was like, oh, wow, this is legit. You know, now I'm really, really excited. I mean, I was already excited, but now I'm excited because a lot of my friends and colleagues will be on the roster. So I'm more excited for the fans because they're in for one hell of a show.
I'll translate that. ¿Qué podemos esperar de PJ quien regresa a México, pero no regresa de cualquier manera? PJ regresa con Federación Wrestling, una empresa nueva que abre sus puertas con un roster increíble el 19 de junio a las 18 horas, a las 6 de la tarde. Pueden conseguir sus boletos por Coin Access Live, boletos o tickets en Coin Access Live, el 19 de junio a las 6 de la tarde. PJ menciona que él ya lleva un tiempo intentando regresar a México, que él pueden esperar lo mejor de él, ahora se le da la oportunidad de regresar. El público siempre se mantiene estático, así que pueden esperar lo mejor de PJ el 19 de junio en Federación Wrestling. Fabricio will also have a pretty interesting question next.
Thank you, Michael. And so, is the history of the Bunny and Vince McMahon real?
Which part?
So what he refers is the behind the scenes stories that there was actually a pitch in the WWE for Vince McMahon to be the Bunny in the end.
Oh, that was my pitch.
What's yours?
Yeah. I came up with all these random pitches because I came up with all these pitches and they never seemed to like them. So at one stage I was like, maybe my ideas are pretty bad. But then later in life, I figured out that they were actually really good. they just didn't want to go with it. That was just one idea I had. It was kind of silly, but I feel like that's what wrestling should be. You know, it should be silly. It should be fun. It should be, you know, all of the above. I don't remember what exactly happened with that, but right after that is actually when I left because I was like, okay, nobody's going to take me serious here. So I'll go do my thing somewhere else.
I'll translate that. Fabricio le pregunta otra pregunta complicada de la noche, de si la historia de Vince McMahon terminando siendo el conejo de Adam Rose era real. PJ Black fue quien propuso la idea. Él dice como que a lo mejor a ellos no les gustan mis ideas porque son muy malas. Después descubrió no, que son muy buenas, simplemente quisieron hacer otro rumbo distinto, pero cuando ya lo tenían haciendo el conejo, el plan que propuso Justin Gabriel en aquel momento era que ya no fuese el conejo, que encontraran ebrio tirado en el camerino al conejo y de repente le quitaran la máscara y resultara que iba a ser Vince McMahon. Algo completamente distinto. Casi se hizo, no se hizo, pero entonces PJ decide salir de la empresa en ese momento y aportar sus ideas al resto del mundo. I also want to say something else in Spanish. Pueden seguir a PJ en sus redes sociales en Instagram como @PJ450, PJ450 en Instagram, en Facebook como Darewolf en Facebook, en YouTube como PJ Black. Pueden suscribirse a su canal de YouTube como PJ Black, en Twitter como @Darewolf333 o Darewolf333. Ahí lo pueden conseguir. Y para toda la mercancía, t-shirts, para bookings y para toda información, pjblack.com y ahí directamente los va a transferir a su página de mercancía, de bookings, etcétera. Lo pueden conseguir también a través de las redes sociales o a través de darewolf.me, pero principalmente pjblack.com es mucho más sencillo. PJ, we will do each other one last question. Before we do that, I want to thank you so much for your time today. It's been a blast for us having the opportunity to have you here again on Lucha Libre Online. What are your current plans? What are your further appearances? You mentioned New Japan Pro Wrestling. You're still with Ring of Honor. We're gonna see you in Federación Wrestling. But man, the world's your oyster. Where can promoters contact you, and what are your current plans or bookings so the fans can follow you over there?
Right. So right now I'm exclusive in the US to Ring of Honor, but I'm allowed to do international bookings. So any international promoters, they can contact me, bookings@pjblack.com, or just reach out on social media. I like traveling. I love traveling. You know, I've been all these countries that I've been to. Some of them I've only been to for like, you know, just a show. So I didn't get to see much. So now when I have an opportunity to go back, I try to spend a few extra days there and, you know, see the country and maybe even teach seminars. I was in Chile in South America last year or the year before, I forget. I'm going back at the end of this, and I've been teaching seminars there, and the kids there are so wonderful. They pick it up so quickly, you know, like a lot of people don't know the history, but back in the day, like way back, like 100, less like 60, 70 years, Lucha Libre was actually at its pinnacle in Chile. And I love that kind of stuff. I love the history of wrestling. I'm a nerd for that. You know, whenever I travel to these places, I try to find out as much as I can about the history. And I got this book in Chile it was like black and white pictures of old school wrestling. And, you know, I collect stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. So I'm excited to just travel more this year. And, you know, just, I feel like I'm in really good shape now, especially after having two almost career-ending injuries. So I'm just very lucky to still be able to do my thing.
Translate that para todos los promotores. Él está en Estados Unidos, con United States, él está exclusivamente con Ring of Honor, pero en el resto del mundo, Argentina, Panamá, Chile, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, todos lados pueden contactarlo a través de bookings@pjblack.com, bookings@pjblack.com, o a través de sus redes sociales, como mencionamos. Está en una excelente forma física. Estuvo en Chile entrenando luchadores, dando seminarios de lucha, y él, como dice, él es un nerd de la lucha libre en cuanto a la historia. Le gusta saber un poco más sobre todo, y tener la oportunidad de ver los libros en blanco y negro con las fotos retro. Fue una experiencia increíble, así que si quieren contactarlo, pueden hacerlo. Un ex campeón en parejas de WWE, actualmente luchador de Ring of Honor. bookings@pjblack.com. Fabricio. Fabri, you can go to your last question.
Okay, thank you, Michael. You're freeze out. So
my bad.
How have you been dealing with injury?
It's tough, man. You know, injuries are physical, so you have to rehab. But for an athlete or anybody that uses their body to make money for a job, right? It's more of a mental thing, you know, and it gets really difficult in the beginning. Luckily, I'm very mentally strong, but that's also to thank my first injury. You know, I was never used to be a mentally strong person. That first injury taught me a lot about life. It made me stronger mentally, physically and emotionally and spiritually. Actually, it actually turned me into a very spiritual person, which I'm very thankful for. You know, that accident was the worst thing that's ever happened to me, but also the best thing that's ever happened to me. So I don't ever want to go through that again, but I'm thankful that I did. And you know, it's a constant. Now I can work out with any pain, but rehab is basically just working out a little bit, and there's a lot of pain, you know. And I'm a biohacker, so I take care of my body. I do the infrared, I do the saunas, I do the vibrating, the sound beds, the sound baths. I do, you know, everything I can try to better my physical body. I get into that, you know. So it's been tough, but it's been rewarding, and it's been cool because I got to try out a bunch of new technologies. You know, a lot of these companies have some new healing technologies like the cryotherapy and that stuff. I do that every day, and you know, I will continue to do that for as long as I put my body through the stuff that I do.
I'll translate that. Fabricio le pregunta por su lesión, cómo está manejando la situación. Mencionó antes conmigo que él ya ha tenido dos almost career-ending injuries, unas lesiones que casi acaban con su carrera, y ahora entonces está teniendo la oportunidad de... La lesión es como que lo mejor que le ha pasado porque le ayudó a trabajar con su cuerpo, a entender lo bueno, a entender lo malo, a poder llevarse al límite y poder continuar dar el máximo para todos, así que ha sido parte de esa experiencia difícil. PJ, as mentioned before, it's been an honor to have you as our guest. We wanted to thank you so much for your time. Always wishing you good luck and success in both your career and personal life. And thank you.
Oh, thank you, Michael. Thank you, Fabricio. Always fun to talk wrestling with you guys. Yeah, anytime you want me back, let's touch back again in a year and let's see what PJ Black has done in 1 year.
Perfect. Así que New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, Federación Wrestling, el mundo es su ostra. Échenle un ojo a PJ Black con su excelente trabajo. Este fue The Darewolf, PJ Black, Fabricio Solano y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Pro Wrestling y Combat Sports en español.